Yes, so welcome on in, everybody, to the Saturday Night Network for another edition of SNL's Greatest Cast Members Countdown. My name is John from the SNN. Very excited to be with you on this double duty night of Saturday Night Live coverage. If you're with us live on this Wednesday, you may have just seen our By the Number show that happened previously to this, and we are also live on this Wednesday night to talk through the next three cast members on the list of greatest cast members of all time. We'll be back for Thursdays for the next 2 weeks after this to count down the top six. But for now, I'm very excited to talk through the cast members we will be revealing tonight and go through the list overall with two great guests. And coming in for the first time to the countdown so far, it is Rebecca North. Rebecca, how are you?
I'm great. I was not prepared for that new intro. I love the new vibe going on there. So I'm excited to be on this countdown episode tonight.
Yes, absolutely. And joining us as well is one of our great patrons, Ian. Ian, how are you?
I'm great. And how are you? Both of you, John and Rebecca, how are you?
Doing well. Very excited. This is like very intense. It's been months and months that we've been counting down these cast members, and I am excited to finally get to the end of the list so we can talk through everything. Yeah, Rebecca, how are you?
I'm great. Yeah. No, I zoned out for a minute. I'm great. It's 9:30 Eastern time. So this is I know, but it's just been like one of those days. I took like Delsum this morning. So I was like a zombie this morning. Cough medicine. I did that, then went to a workout, then I came back and I was like, I feel funny. I feel like I've been awake for hours, but it's great. I'm so excited to be in the top 10. So I'm bringing a little bit of chaotic energy tonight.
Excited to have you here as well. Rebecca, just a quick audio thing. Just check to make sure that you are using your regular mic, if you can, just in your settings. Just want to make sure that we can hear you properly. I only just realized that now. But yes, so we have, okay, great. So we have three more cast members we are revealing tonight. So far, we have revealed 41 names on the list, and this is very exciting to get to these top 10 cast members because I think the debates have gotten more and more interesting every single week. So I'm very excited to reveal the next three. But before we do that, we have a tradition that every single week we go through the ones that we have revealed so far. And I get to ask the panel how they think the listeners have done. So I'm going to bring up on screen spoilers incoming in case you are not caught up. We're going to reveal the 41 that we have done so far over the last few weeks. And here we go on screen right now. So we have a lot of names on this list, but I will go through them with all of you so you know 50 through 10 who has been revealed. And then I'm going to ask Rebecca and Ian. So starting up from 50, we got Kevin Nealon, Joe Piscopo, David Spade, Mikey Day, Tracy Morgan, Chevy Chase, Jimmy Fallon, Bowen Yang, Marty Short, and Sherry O'Terry. Up from 40, we have Ego Wodem, Karen Killam, Chris Parnell, John Lovitz, Beck Bennett, Jane Curtin, Seth Meyers, Daryl Hammond, Anna Gasteyer, and Bobby Moynihan. Up from 30, Tim Meadows, Vanessa Bayer, Bill Murray, Rachel Dratch, Adam Sandler, Jan Hooks, Adie Bryant, John Belushi, Molly Shannon, and Andy Samberg. 20 through 11 are Norm Macdonald, Mike Myers, Will Forte, Dan Aykroyd, Jason Sudeikis, Fred Armisen, Maya Rudolph, Chris Farley, Tina Fey, and Grilda Radner. And then at 10, Kenan Thompson. So, Ian, how do you feel like the list is so far?
I think it's a really good list. I mean, there's some names I might swap around here and there, but there's so many to choose from. But I think this is it's hard to argue with a lot of it, in my opinion.
Is there anything you can argue with or you want to argue with?
Well, I love Adam Sandler, but I think I love him more for his post SNL career, So I think I would put him kind of up there with in the Kevin Nealon, kind of lower up with David Spade, because he's also someone that I liked on SNL, but I just think they had a bigger impact on me personally with their movies and things they've done afterwards.
Fair enough. Yeah, for sure. I mean, that is definitely something that people may take into account when they were voting, is how they felt about the cast members after the show, which is something that you do consider when you are watching SNL. Is hey, will these people make it? And that is a factor to consider, but it may be a small factor compared to how they actually did on the show. And Rebecca, I'd love to ask you what you think of these power rankings so far, that we have the cast rankings 50 through 10.
I mean, looking at 50 through 10, there's no name I'm completely like shook to even see make it this far up. I think this is like a really, really solid list. But for some standouts that I was just a little confused of, and no shade at all, but I was kind of shook by the Will Forte at 18. Like that seemed very, very high for me. I
Really?
don't know, like, yeah, I mean, he's great and all, but he's just not. Maybe it's a personal thing. Like I think he's funny and all, but it's just like
I'm about
when
to
I
look you
saw him
up.
there, like that's no, I was like, that's in like the top 20, and I don't quite think he's there. Like he should be in this 50 list, don't get me wrong, but I honestly would be okay with like him in the 30s. I
Awesome.
don't know. I know, but so that's one hot take. Another one is Andy Samberg should be higher up, maybe in that Will Forte 18, because I think there's stigmas, obviously, in each column, because we're going to say, like, oh, they're a top 10 cast member, according to SNN fans. They're a top 20 and all of that. And Andy Samberg, while I feel like maybe his sketch work and impressions were, I do think they were really impactful, but I think he kind of brought in with Lonely Island a whole new vibe to the show and something completely different that we're even seeing now with Please Don't Destroy. And we saw like in the following seasons just with various cast members. I think it kind of changed the game a little bit in terms of like the vibe of the show and also breaking it into mainstream. Like I was singing I Just Had Sex when I was like 9 years old because of the show.
It's a
And
little young.
then I know, right? And then Keenan is the last one I'm going to dive into here because I mean, how could the longest running cast member of all time not like just skate by in the top 10? I feel like even off of principle, but also like, I mean, I'm a numbers person, I'm a nerd. You look at it statistically, he's going to have more impact on the show for being on it that much time. And I feel like he's not someone that's just like a background, like he always is a standout in what he does. So like, I mean, 10 is obviously a great ranking, but I think a little shocked that he was not higher up.
Okay, fair enough. Well, we have the list so far. Tonight, we're going to reveal 9, 8, and 7, and then I'll reveal where I have those cast members slotted into my list so far. So, Rebecca, Ian, are you ready to reveal the first name on the list tonight?
I'm so ready.
Okay, let's do this. Let's talk about somebody who was on the show in one of the greatest eras in SNL history, somebody who was on for about 7 seasons and really brought the show back as far as I am concerned. And that would be one of the most well-rounded cast members in SNL history, the one, the only, at number 9, Dana Carvey here at number 9 is where he came in. 121 episodes for Dana, 516 sketches. Really just a legend of the show. Comes in for that second golden era and just truly just has an amazing first episode in season 12 all over the show. Brings these like characters that are just so perfect for Saturday Night Live. And, you know, to me, probably the best cast member in SNL history as far as balancing characters with impressions. Like he is just so well rounded. It checks off all the boxes. Like if he was a professional athlete and this was a professional sport, I think as far as like what you look for in all the skill sets, I think Dana is 5 out of 5 everywhere across the board. So you know, I think he's just so meant to be in this top 10. Is it a little low? I do have that question. There's some things that I do question compared to some of the cast members that are going to come up ahead of Dana that we'll talk about, but I want to get some initial thoughts on Dana Carvey as a cast member and where he landed on the list. Rebecca, over to you. Number 9, Dana.
Yeah, I mean, you really encompassed it when you made that like athlete analogy. I feel like Dana Carvey could have been a professional NBA, NFL, and MLB player all in once because usually you see through a lot in, especially even in this top 50 list, these people are on here for a niche. They're here for a reason. We're like, wow, you're such a great impressionist, or you played a president, or this recurring sketch, a weekend update character, musical parodies, and whatnot. And he kind of did it all. And like the fact that you can go from obviously an incredible and notorious like presidential impression stances to a Wayne's World. I know we'll dive deeper into the rest of these, but like you think of him and there's not one specific thing that only pops into your head. There are so many different aspects of him being on the show that really stand out. And I think that's why he's number 9 because it's so well-rounded. He kind of brought the show back and brought it to where we're back to the not ready for primetime players, but in a more modern way. And I think, yeah, I'm really, really excited to see him here. And by no means am I surprised.
For sure. And definitely, you know, younger viewers now would know Dana Carvey, even though he hasn't hosted the show since 2011, I believe. He does host the show 4 times after he leaves, but and cameos a bunch too. But they know him from Fly on the Wall, which has been a very popular podcast he does with David Spade and interviewing all of these former SNL alumni. So he's certainly in the zeitgeist to which people would tend to vote for Dana Carvey. But Ian, what do you think about Dana's ranking here at 9?
I think it makes excuse me. I think it makes sense. I think he's one of the people that are synonymous with the show, and characters even surpass the show itself. Basically like Wayne's World. I feel like a lot of people probably don't know that it's from SNL. They might just think it's a movie, like a standalone movie or something. So I think that helps, and I think that draws his, like, kind of what we were talking about earlier. It kind of puts him beyond the show, but in a good way, more than like their work beyond the show. Because I mean, I knew him when Master of Disguise came out from being on SNL, and I was just a child when that movie came out, and I think that's pretty good if children know who you are when you're making movies. I mean, that's just the way I look at it. But yeah, he's got legendary characters, impressions, still doing impressions. So it makes sense for him to be in the top 10, in my opinion.
Yeah. Look, so I'll tell you both, and I've been repeating this with some of our new guests that have been on the show week to week, is that I have 3 criteria that I look at when I'm evaluating SNL cast members. And I really need you to have all the dots or all the boxes checked in all 3 criteria to be the greatest of all time. Is he made for the show? Was he built in a lab to be on SNL? That's my first criteria. Is he the best? And I actually do think that Dana Carvey could be the best cast member in SNL history. I think that he was like perfectly made in a lab to be on Saturday Night Live. If like Lorne Michaels was, like I said, going to a lab and trying to build the perfect SNL cast member, I think he's building Dana Carvey. So I think he checks all the boxes there. From an analytics perspective, he is rather low compared to what you would expect to get from Dana Carvey. So Dana Carvey's SPE, or sketches per episode average, is 3.8. That's 31st all time among cast members with 30 or more episodes. Now, the question is does he make the most of those sketches that he's in? Absolutely. Dana's a force, but he is, very often behind analytically Phil Hartman and Jan Hooks, who are obviously 2 of the all-time greats as well, but he just doesn't carry the show in that way. You're going to get probably 3 or 4 Dana moments a night. You're not going to get Dana Carvey in every single sketch the way you did with Phil Hartman. So you have to think about that as far as that's concerned. Like I said, 4-time host, 55 live from New York's, clearly anchoring a ton of cold opens that he would do just by himself as George H.W. Bush. So many nights you would open the show with Dana Carvey opening the show and just being direct to camera and going on for 5 or 10 minutes. And, that is a factor when you're considering his legacy on the show, which is really my 3rd criteria. And I think Dana Carvey's legacy is pretty strong, would be even stronger if he was in the 5-timers club. As a 4-time host, I think he's missing that last little bit to really solidify him there as being one of the GOATs. So yeah, I think he has almost everything you need, which is why he's in the top 10, but doesn't just cross that finish line for me as being like the greatest and in the upper tier, as we'll get to over the next couple of weeks. So Rebecca, for you, would love to know, in your research and your watching of Dana Carvey sketches, are there any moments that you think really well represent his time on the show?
Yeah, so I think you were kind of touched on this with the George H.W. Bush, the George H. Bush impression that he did. I think there were a lot of, obviously, the cold opens where he completely did it himself, and he was really the anchor there. But I think in Perot, can you correct me on the pronunciation? Because
Ross Perot, yeah.
I didn't know if it was like Perot, or I was making it fancy by saying Perot, but yes. So it is in the Bush and Perot impressions. I know we saw some of this with J.A.J. this season, but he was kind of the OG of doing both impressions, like really, really strong political impressions that were able to tie to him. And I think that's something that is so classic when we look back at his time on the show. That's something that really stands out. And then the other one for me is Wayne's World, because I mean, he took it to the silver screen. I knew Wayne's World, and I didn't even know it was an SNL thing growing up, but I knew what Wayne's World was because, one, there were spoofs of it on Nickelodeon and different vibes with that, like on the Amanda show. And then I was like, where did this come from? And it was Wayne's World. And after watching the movie at like a young age, I was like, this is awesome. And then when I found out it was SNL, I was like, whoa, because he really took SNL into the mainstream. And I know he kind of joined the cast at a time where they needed a boost. And I think he was exactly that boost that we were looking for, to not only make the episodes really awesome, but also to make people want to watch SNL and to hook them in. And I think Wayne's World for me is like the number one standout, Dana Carvey. But it was also like nostalgic for me.
For sure. I mean, you can't not think of Wayne's World as being one of the most important sketches in SNL history. His ability to work with different cast members is one of his best criteria that you think about when you think of Dana Carvey. Like the fact that him and Mike were such a great pair, him and Kevin Nealon being such a great pair together, and Hans and Franz, like that's the type of thing where it's like, when you look for cast members, you want to see somebody that could work with everybody and wasn't just known for being with one specific person. And the fact that he could do that, but then he could also be just alone, you know, playing the church lady or playing George H.W. Bush and just, you know, doing all these things. Like he is so dynamic that I think that it's exactly why he deserves to be here. Ian, for you, any other sketches that you went back and you watched and you were like, oh, wow, I really just enjoyed this from Dana?
Well, I rewatched a couple of his old ones, like the massive head wound Harry with the dog and how he managed to like power through that. Because I mean, who knew what that dog was gonna do with his head?
Yeah, so that's season 17, episode 6, and that is a sketch that he talks about a lot, where the dog was licking his head, which it's a very, very funny sketch if you go back and watch that one.
I'm surprised I didn't see Hans and Franz in this in these here, but I always liked them, like the little pump you up.
Yeah.
I loved his Bob Dylan. Even as a kid, I thought him and the Bob Dylan and Tom Petty bit was hilarious. It was just nonsense, and I like that. So
that
those
was really
just
great.
stood out to me. But he's got so many. It's kind of hard to narrow down which ones like are like my favorite, because I love Dana Carvey.
Yeah, I sort of feel like he had, like, every episode, he just had one memorable moment at least. And, you know, that's really important when you're talking about a top 10 cast member in SNL history. I think his Johnny Carson impression also, like, really strong and just so important back in the day to be able to do that. The chopping broccoli that we got in the end of the episode to open up season 12, and that's Sigourney Weaver, very famous episode. He probably has the best first episode in SNL history, I would think, like, just in terms of just everyone's like, whoa, who is this Dana Carvey person? And then like a lot of his castmates talk about just like when they got there, they were not sure exactly how to work the show, but Dana was fully formed. And that is just what's so impressive about somebody like him. But like I said, the analytics thing is where I really take pause. I look, season 12 tied for second, season 13 second, season 14 fourth, season 15 fifth in sketch appearances, season 16 third, season 17 third, and season 18 he will leave the show, so we don't get a complete resume builder there. Just never does lead the cast in sketch appearances. I can never watch a season of the show and be like, that was Dana's season. I think he's a major part of every season he was a part of, but I never looked at Dana and be like, okay, he's absolutely dominating all the way through. So again, these are nitpicky things why I think that maybe he is in a slight tier below somebody like a Phil Hartman, but still just an incredible career for Dana Carvey. Rebecca, I'd love to just get any other comments or thoughts you have on Dana and his place at none.
Yeah, I think also you really hit on it with the ability to work with other people, and it was in a pretty seamless way. And upon my research, I saw that he was actually offered, NBC really wanted him to take the Letterman slot for a talk show. And I think that also is a testament to how much you can really connect with someone, because there's a handful of late night hosts in the world that are really successful. I mean, we joke that the Oscars are always hosted by the Jimmys because there are only so many people who could do something like that. And when you started saying that like the connection with the cast members, I think that was not only apparent to viewers, but like NBC, and he was just a major player in media and in the time. And obviously he turned it down and it eventually went to Conan, that spot. But I think that's also a really good testament of someone like we saw Seth Meyers was pretty high up on the board for someone who like maybe I don't know, just doing the host and in real life. And I kind of see him as someone that has the Seth Meyers, but then also has someone with a really good political impression. And that's just what makes him so well-rounded, is that like we can't pinpoint. Yes, we can't pinpoint a perfect season for him, or even maybe an episode that was such a standout. But the fact that there are so many things that he's good at, I know you are a little surprised to see him this high up, but like I think that is why he is this high up on the list.
Yeah, we will get the Dana Carvey show, which will air for, I believe, 8 episodes on ABC in 1996. So that will happen. He will get his own show, but it will be very short-lived. I do think that he is like such a fascinating cast member to talk about in terms of his post SNL career, where he really doesn't have one that you would expect based on his level of performance on the show. I think, if there was some sort of numerical chart to be able to rate like how great of an SNL cast member somebody is to how well they did after SNL, he has like a very weird ratio there, because I'm not saying he wasn't successful, but based on what he did on the show, you would expect that Dana Carvey would be one of the biggest stars in the world for decades since Saturday Night Live. And I think he even self-admittedly would say like he didn't have the post SNL career that I think he wanted to. And he has been great as a host on Fly on the Wall, and returning to those roots. But I would have expected maybe him to be in more stuff. And perhaps that is why he's not a 5-timer yet. I have to think the show is going to rectify that next year.
When you mentioned that, I was like, that's a perfect 50th season 5-timer club. I think that would really be a full circle moment and would be a really awesome episode to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And given that we, unfortunately cannot get Phil or Jan to host, I think that having Dana host sometime next season would be a great representation of that second golden era, and having them, have an episode in the 50th season of the show. Ian, final thoughts on Dana Carvey?
I mean, I think that would be a good 5-timer, especially if it was like the opening episode, kind of like how they had Chris Rock open that one season. He would be a great season 50 opener, depending on what their plans are, unless they're going like a big every single person who's ever touched that stage kind of thing. But I don't know what their approach is going to be, but if they just kind of go their normal route but with some big names, I think he would be a great start to the 50th season, especially with the 5-timers. That's a good way to get some cameos right off the bat. So I am excited to see how they do it, because have they ever done 5-timers in more than one 5-timer in a season? Like, I don't know if he would ever come back like 49 before 50.
Well, we did have Paul Rudd and John Mulaney in the same season a couple of seasons ago. So yeah, it could happen. I mean, if it was going to happen, I would think it would happen next season for sure. Because we do have like some interesting 4-timers, Adam Driver included, coming up this weekend. So I think there are some people that could hit the 5-timers club next season. So that would be exciting. And I do wonder if perhaps maybe SNL would like a couple more 5-timers in there prior to the 50th anniversary celebration, when, we would typically see like at the 40th, they did those pictures of all the 5-timers, like all sitting around with each other and stuff like that. Like, it's a big publicity moment for them. So to get a good group of 5-timers together could be interesting. And I think Dana deserves to be a part of something like that. So hopefully we will see it. All right. Dana Carvey in at 9. There you go. 1 down, 2 more to talk about tonight. Oh, I'll also say final note on Dana Carvey, that Rolling Stone, we've been revealing every week where Rolling Stone put these cast members about 10 years ago in their rankings. Rolling Stone, right before SNL 40, had Dana Carvey at 11, said that he was the greatest impressionist in SNL history. So 11, 9, pretty close.
Well, 11, that is interesting if you're saying it's 10 years ago, because I would assume, I don't know anything, but like there is at least one very specific in the past 10 years cast member that I think would be in the top 10. So I don't know. Right. I don't know if we'll see them tonight, but like there are some that actually a few people, but like that I'm surprised. I feel like it would be bumped up and now would be bumped down. So it's interesting.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, they had Chevy Chase at 10, so I guess we'll see. But
I didn't know the credibility there, so
yeah, the credibility is not great, but it's always fun to bring up and compare. All right, let's get to number 8 on the list. This is somebody who I do feel is, was sort of the heart of the show while they were on the show. Was on for a very long time, and somebody that I am very used to talking about here on the podcast, and that would be somebody who was on for 10 and a half seasons on the show, the one, the only, Cecily Strong, here at number 8, 202 episodes of Saturday Night Live. 911 sketches on the show. Good for third all time in the history of the show. 911 sketches, just incredible. Comes on in an era that just really just changes the game for women at the show, and really dominates. When Cecily left the show last year, it was a huge deal. And there's so many moments from Cecily's career that I think are interesting to talk about. A lot of them that we did get to cover here. We got to cover her for 2.5 seasons of her career here on the show. And I'm excited to talk about her again here. So Ian, you yourself, when you signed up for these shows, you said you wanted to talk about Cecily Strong, and here she is at number 8 on the list. So what are your thoughts?
I'm happy to see her in the top 10. I think she's one of the modern names that are synonymous with the show, for the newer generation. I fell in love with her on the cast when she was doing the girl you wish you hadn't started a conversation with at the party. And then everything after that, I was just sold. And I'm mad at myself. I forgot all about the science room when I was doing my rewatches, just from memory. And I love the science room so much too. But she's got so many to talk about. I mean, her short stint on Weekend Update was great. All of her songs, the porn stars or former porn stars with Vanessa Bayer. There's just, I don't even know where to begin, but I'm just still, the science room. I can't even believe I didn't rewatch any of the science room before this.
Well, I mean, those are great sketches. And the thing is that, when we talked about a year ago, we did our farewell to Cecily Strong, and we talked about her career. We were saying how at the beginning of her career, she joins in an era that's really big on recurring characters. And you get that with her and Aidy Bryant in the, Girlfriends talk show. You get the ex-pornstars with Vanessa Bayer. And then the show starts to sort of move away from that. And she transitions really easily into these one-off sketches, these impressions of Republican candidates. She is a big part of the Trump era of the show, where she's playing Melania and Jeanine Pirro and, different Republican women. And, that is a big part for her too. But she also has that minor stint on Weekend Update, like Ian mentioned. To me, she is just so all over the show for such a long time. Only being, less than a year away from her, it's hard to truly evaluate her legacy. But I did know that when she left the show, I was like, is this a Mount Rushmore person? Is this a Mount Rushmore woman in the history of the show? These are things to think about, because certainly she was beloved during her time there. So Rebecca, what are your thoughts on Cecily Strong here at 8?
I love Cecily Strong, but I don't think she should be on 8. I think that is just a little too high. I'm saying, I want to make that clear. I think she should be in the top 13, but I'm shocked to see her break through that top 10 list. I really do love Cecily, and she did join the show at a time where it was kind of hard to nudge yourself in there. And I look back, and that was my time getting into SNL, was her, Kate, and Aidy, and as that trio there that just really looped me into the show. But even just before, and I was saying there are people in the past 10 years that I think should be in there, my mind instantly went to Kate and not Cecily. And I think that she's not something that pops in my mind as that a top 10 material. We look at her, and we did do the episode where you look back at, and she's had an awesome career, and I think she was really the anchor. But I think the reason why I'm a little hesitant to say 8 is her spot is because I think she stayed on a bit too long. I think if she left in her heyday, there's always that recency bias. I might have left with maybe yeah, you're the perfect cast member and you ended at the right time, because yes, her recurring characters are really why we love her. You mentioned, I don't know if Jeanine Pirro is a recurring character, but it is. I know it's an impression, but it's also a recurring character because it was a caricature. And also I think Gemma is another one to note that is just so strong. But it got towards her last 2 seasons where we're again, I was kind of wishing by her last episode, she was going back to those old characters that we knew and loved her for, that we hadn't seen all season. That was her farewell episode. And I fear that they were nailed in a little bit hard, because she really was anchoring the show. It was right after COVID, weird times in the world and all of that. I understand. But that being said, I don't want to discount how strong she is on the cast. And like, she is someone that's super, super memorable. And she really was compatible. I know we talked about that with Dana Carvey, but like, she was really compatible with a lot of people. Yeah, I don't think Weekend Update was like her strong suit. Just when you look back at her SNL career, I'm not like, oh yes, her anchoring Weekend Update, but it wasn't bad. And the reason it wasn't bad is because she is compatible with the people that she's interviewing. She's compatible with any of the co-hosts. So I don't know. I really do love her, but I'm very shocked to see her at number 8.
Yeah, I think that, Kate McKinnon for a very long time on the show was the star of Saturday Night Live. Like, if you asked a casual person who didn't know the show, like, name me one SNL cast member, they were like, oh, I know Kate McKinnon, because she had some really big moments on the show. She, probably she peaked very early, like she had a very high elevation very early. And I think that Cecily was largely underappreciated for a long time, where, like I said, they had this really dynamic performer. You get to see the girl you wish you hadn't started a conversation with at a party. There's some really fun things from her. And then they put her on Weekend Update, and it's a little bit of a weird fit between her and Colin. And then they take her off of it because she wants to be in more sketches, and they're still trying to figure it out. And they bring in Shay, and it takes a little bit while for me to sort of, look at Cecily and be like, okay, she's nailed it. But then she does, then she really gets it for a few years. And I think that if you take her out of the last, 5 or 6 years on the show, I think it's a significantly worse show. I think she's a big anchor for a lot of great moments. Some of the best moments that we would walk away from during some really tough years at the show would be Cecily Strong moments. So for me, I think that she's going to be more appreciated as time goes on. It's really, really hard to do this only a year away from it. But I think that, when she does eventually come back to host the show or appear, people will be very excited, just as excited as they were sad that she left the show when we got this beautiful moment last year with Blue Christmas. Ultimately, Colin Jost and crying and all that stuff. Like, it was just, it was a very big deal when Cecily Strong left the show. And I'm sure for everybody that's there. As far as my criteria, I mean, made for the show, certainly. I mean, I think she's just very well suited to be in sketch comedy. She has other things that I think she could be doing, and I think she is doing, including plays and as being a dramatic actress. She's a really talented actress, so she could definitely do other stuff, but she is great on SNL. From an analytics perspective, 4.51 sketches per episodes, 14th all time, tied with Beck Bennett. I mean, 4.5 sketches, that's pretty strong. She also does a lot of voiceover work, so I just, want to count that as something to think about when you're evaluating Cecily Strong and her roles on screen. Like, she plays a very important role as far as doing voiceovers and commercials and things like that. So that's a factor here. 39 live from New York, so 6th all time. And I mean, sketch leader in season 43. She was second place in season 40, second place in 41, second place in 42, and first in 43. So, like, for about a 5-year run, she was just such an important part of the show from basically season 40 all the way through season 43. And the last few seasons, had COVID, and they were trying to sort of figure out when was the right time for her to leave the show. So it's tough to evaluate, like I said, right now. But I think what she meant for the show, yes. Analytics are pretty strong. And legacy factor, I think she's always going to be a part of this group of women that just ran the show for many years. And I think people are going to remember her for that. So, Ian, any other moments from Cecily's career that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I liked her sketch with Bill Hader when he hosted, when she was married to him with the wheelchair pushing Melissa Villaseñor around. Really like that. I tear up every time I watch the Blue Christmas, though, just because it's so emotional. And I'm like, dang, even a year later, it's still making me sad. Well, not sad. It's like a bittersweet sad, I guess. But and her the Tammy the Trucker and the right, that was her name.
Yep.
Tammy.
Yep.
Yeah, that one.
We got that.
That was a good one.
We got Goober the Clown too.
Yeah, Goober. I seen him on. Oh, excuse him. I don't know why I said him. Goober the Clown on there. And with my rewatch, the Christmas with Matt Damon pre-tape, where like it was the best Christmas ever, and it was just chaos, and then they would cut back to them being in love. I really like that one. It was kind of wholesome at the end, but it was a fun one. But yeah, she's great. I would like to see her. I wouldn't mind seeing her come back, even though it's been soon. But like with 50 coming up and her being so big and important to the show, I think it wouldn't be any surprise that we will see her within 50.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw her on the show in a couple of weeks, right? Because with Kate coming back to host, it could be somebody that pops up. Cecily Strong would be exciting, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if she hosted next year. I assume with having Pete and Kate host in 49, I don't think we're going to get Cecily hosting in 49, but wouldn't be surprised if we saw her host in 50. Rebecca, what about you? Any other moments from Cecily's career you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, we just think about hosting. I wish like obviously time isn't allowing it because like season 50 is next season, but if she had her solo host moment 80 did, and then they came on in the season 50 to have like the joint co-host, like the Amy and Tina, like that would have been so iconic. I mean, realistically, it won't happen, and nor do I want it to like let them have their own hosting moment, but like if we had a few more years in between, that would have been so amazing. Anyway, I digress. I don't want to discredit me being critical of her being number 8 as me not loving her. I think she is part of the reason I'm even like watching SNL. And I think part of that goes to, I mean, you look at that time frame, and I know we keep talking about like 80, Kate and Cecily, and those women did lead the show and they were on it. And I think part of that was it was such a tumultuous time in the world over her many, many seasons on the show. She kind of joined on at a time where the world was maybe a little more tame, and then into the Trump era, I think she was a big part of that and like a grounding factor. And I think there's so much that happened in the world that would affect her and people she like loved, and really the vibe and culture of the world and the show, that she's so strong. And I think Goober the Clown is like the perfect example of just why she is special, and her just raw ability to not only be funny but also to share herself on the screen. Like she gave herself to the world and really allowed that. And I think a lot of that has to stem from the time period she was on the show. She was on it, joined maybe now or maybe prior to everything happening in the world, like maybe it wouldn't have happened. And I know it's a little bit of a serious note, but I do think like with SNL, I don't know. I think she really was just raw on the show. And I think that is also part of the reason why like she is 8, although maybe I don't agree with like her exact career on it. But I think the reason why we had so many votes for her in the spot were because of her heart. And like people just like, she's a comfort person. Like we would see her on the screen and we would know, like, even if it's not going to be like rolling on the floor laughing, it's going to be an enjoyable sketch. And I think that's probably why she's in this spot, is like the comfort and the reliability of Cecily over her tenure on the show.
Yeah, I think that the two people who I think legacies will grow as time keeps going by, I think, is Beck Bennett, certainly, and Cecily Strong. I think that they just general, casual fans of the show will be more appreciative of their moments. But very well said, Rebecca. I think that there's, I called it the heart of the show during her time there. I mean that a lot. I think that she's a really important part of SNL history. And I can't wait to see what we're going to get to see from her next. So back in 2014, Rolling Stone actually had her ranked at 39. Obviously, she was, very fresh into her career, only about, less than halfway through her career at that point. So not fair to really criticize that ranking, but I would be curious to know how they would rank her now. Clearly, our fans felt like she was top 10, and we have a lot of Cecily fans out there. So it will be interesting. If we do this again in about 10 years, I'm curious, maybe she'll be slightly lower on the list as time parts, but I do think that even though she may be lower on the list as time goes on, I think she'll be more appreciated for sure. Ian, any final thoughts on Cecily?
No, I think I don't think I could keep going on and on about Cecily, so I'll just say that I'm happy to see her in the top 10, and I'm excited to see what else we get from her in the future, especially with the future of SNL.
Agreed. Okay, so Cecily Strong, 8 on the list. One more to talk about tonight. I'm excited to have this conversation about this next person because this is one of my favorite cast members that I've ever seen on the show, and somebody who I truly was like, where are they going to come on this list? Because I think I feel maybe higher on them than the general SNL audience. So I'm curious if you guys feel the same, if the audience feels the same. But here we go. Let's talk about, to me, one of the greats of the greats, and that is at number 7 on the list, Amy Poehler here at number 7 was on the show for about 7.5 seasons between 2001 and mid 2008. 139 episodes, 24th all time, 769 sketches, 12th all time. Also a 2-time host, hosted once with Tina Fey. And to me, such a well-rounded cast member, somebody who really they leaned on heavily for many years on the show, carried the show through a little bit of rough times. But I'm excited to talk about her because her analytics are off the charts. Just incredible stuff that she did at the show. And I want to get into it, but I want to give Rebecca and Ian their chance to talk about here at number 7, the legendary Amy Poehler. So Rebecca, thoughts on Amy here at 7?
Robbed. I think she should have been higher, but I'm not complaining because if she was higher, I wouldn't be able to talk about her on this episode. So I am glad for my sake that I'm able to talk about her, but I think she should have been higher. I mean, yeah, you said you're higher on her maybe than the regular person, but she's in my top 2 SNL cast members of all time. I am so obsessed with Amy Poehler. So I'm going to try and be as objective as possible without letting it shine through. But she's literally part of the reason I ever got into comedy because I'm just so anytime she's on my screen, I laugh. The comfort. I mean, her, I think, flexibility on the show to be really, really successful weekend update anchor. And then she's if up there my favorite of all time. And when we did the ideal episode draft a while ago, she was my weekend update anchor because then that was a no-brainer for me. I also think she has so many iconic characters, but also you could throw her into any sketch, even if she's in the background, that's where your eyes go. I know star quality is kind of my my bar. I know you have your own metrics rating, but obviously I'm going to take her work outside of SNL aside because obviously that is an insane legacy that she left there. But you watch her in these sketches and she's star quality. And I think that's a no-brainer for me. And she's someone that I guarantee I will always laugh if she's there. So I do think she should have been higher in my personal. I mean, I would say 5 maybe. But she's my personal top 2. But I'm very excited to be able to dive deeper into her. But I could go on forever. So let's throw this to Ian.
I love this because I was absolutely devastated when she left the show. She had she was pregnant and she left the show and then she came back and then she left again. And I was this show needs I thought the show needed Amy Poehler. Little did I know what I was going to end up seeing from Kristen, but I really felt Amy was such an important part of my viewership of the show throughout the many years from season 28 through to 33, which you could see on screen that she was the sketch leader for. It's just she is so important to the history of the show, and I'll get into why. But Ian, I would love to hear your thoughts on Amy Poehler overall here at number 7.
I was scared that when we weren't seeing her name, and then when we saw Tina, I was scared because I thought more people would go Tina over Amy just because I like Amy and Tina the same. I love them both, but I just always thought that Tina would have been higher, maybe because of I don't know why, but I'm happy that she made it. Top 10 is fine for her anywhere. I think she would have been good. Always, yeah, just like Rebecca said, anytime she's on screen, it's hilarious. She's so good. I think she is another one that is made for the show. I think she could do anything, and I think I've said it one of the times I was on here that I want to see her host. I don't even care if she's not promoting anything. I just want to see her come back again because she's so, and I would just be curious to see her work with all these new people.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I would welcome it at any time. The fact that she's only hosted 2 times to me is an absolute travesty. I know she was busy with Parks and Rec, and then we did get to see her a little bit during the Aubrey Plaza episode last season. But I just think she's so fantastic. For me, she, like I said, I think she carries the show for many seasons. Tina Fey basically takes over as head writer, and Amy Poehler is the one who goes out and does the heavy lifting in so many sketches for so many seasons. And it's not she has a million recurring characters that we're gonna be okay, yeah, like that's the Amy character. Like, yes, she had Caitlyn. I think Bronx Beat is like a personal favorite of mine that a lot of people like. She had the Needlers with Seth. Her relationship with Seth on Weekend Update, I think, was really strong. We also had the two anchor women together, where we got Tina and Amy as both running Weekend Update, and of course, they're going to be one of the best duos in SNL history. Go on to host award shows, and then now they're on a comedy tour. Like, they're just so fantastic together. But I just felt like every, similar to a Phil Hartman, I feel like every writer was like, oh, I need to get Amy Poehler in my sketch in some way. And I just think like it's such a unique and specific quality to only a few people in SNL history that I felt like you could write Amy Poehler into any sketch because she was so dynamic in that way. So was she meant for the show? Like, no doubt. She's a no-brainer meant for the show. Her sketches per episode average was 5.26. That's good for 4th all time. I mean, just that's incredible. Like, it's incredible stuff. And then she, like I said, she leads the cast in sketch appearances for seasons 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33. So if anyone was to come to me and say, hey, John, the show wasn't so great when Amy was leading the cast in sketch appearances, I would say F off, because the show was really strong in season 32 and 33, which a lot of people consider some of the greater seasons. And Amy was leading the cast in those seasons. So I don't think that I will not put the show, not being to its best quality at the feet of Amy Poehler. Like, I think if anything, Amy Poehler, like, let the show tread water for many years. So I totally disagree with that sentiment. In season 31, she was in 119 sketches. Like, that's like Phil Hartman numbers. Like, that's just like incredible stuff that she did. So I just want to reiterate, analytics wise, to me, that as when she left the show, I thought she was the greatest woman in SNL history. I was like, she is, and she may have been at the time. I think like two people will come along, and maybe we'll talk about them in the next couple of weeks, but I think two people will come along and perhaps take that mantle. But Amy Poehler, to me, is as well-rounded as it gets as a cast member in the history of the show, and totally deserves to be up here in the top 10. Rebecca, I'd love to go to you for any other moments that you have from Amy's career that you'd like to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up Bronx Beat, and I think that is also one of my just comfort. Like, you put it on, and I know I'm going to be laughing. And then also Meet Your Second Wife is one that stands out to me as like one of my favorite sketches of all time. I think Amy is dynamic. I mean, you read the stats, and like, I didn't even realize that she was in that much of the show, but it goes to your point. Like, writers want to work with her and they want to write with her. And that really does translate into the real world. Like, so many people in the real world want to work with her. And I think she is so compatible. I'm shocked she's only hosted once, but I hope it's not that case where she's like, doesn't want to spoil it type of scenario where she's like, I'll come on to promote things, or like, I'll come on for this. Cause like, we need her back on it. I mean, we look at her, I mean, it's only natural to kind of compare cast members to cast members. And like, yes, I know, Ian, you mentioned Tina Fey, and Tina to me wasn't the anchor of sketches. Tina has the Lauren effect. Like I would be happy with Tina taking over SNL one day from that, because she's a writer, she's an organizer, she does that. But Amy, you looked for her in a sketch, and like, she was that standout person that you're like, when's she going to speak? Because I'm going to laugh. And I think she was so dynamic in making like those seasons some of the best seasons of SNL, which is why I think she should have been higher. I mean, I can gather who the other two women who like John was alluding to probably are. I mean, you mentioned when she was off the show, you were so nervous, and then Kristen came, who was I said she's in my top 2. It's her and Kristen of all-time cast members. And I think it's because she left such a big void that really, like, the writers were like, we need such a strong like woman in these sketches. And that's like the Amy hole that she left in all those. And yeah, I don't know. I think you just look back, I was reading through like her sketch list, and I think it's also impressive that like there aren't so many like repeats, because she could do anything, that she didn't need those. Obviously she had a few, but like, she didn't need to rely on that. And like, it's an okay crutch, because it's part of the reason we like the show and we're ready for that. But like, she would come back on to host, and I'm okay with an entirely new slate of sketches without any repeat characters. And I think that kind of stands the testament to her ability in like being funny.
Yeah. And I want to also talk about like a what if scenario. What if Hillary Clinton got elected in 2008 and not Barack Obama? Amy Poehler would be playing the president of the United States and would have stayed on the show for a very long time. Because I promise you, Amy they would have found a way to keep her on the show in that case. And I mean, to me, like then we would be talking to her about her in terms of like GOAT status. I know that we're living in this universe, but still, I think that like her role playing Hillary Clinton, and again, like Kate McKinnon's gonna take that mantle and run with it. And we can talk about that when we talk about that, but she did it really well then too. And that Sarah Palin, Hillary Clinton stuff between Amy and Tina, like is some of the greatest moments in modern SNL history. So I just think, I know I use this word a lot, but I do think she's underappreciated because I think it's very easy to talk about. We think of the first golden era of the show, and we think of Gilda Radner, and we think of the second golden era of the show, and then we think of Jan Hooks, and then it's very easy to jump to Kristen Wiig, Kate McKinnon because of their domination over the last like 15 years. But I don't want to forget about Amy Poehler, because I think Amy Poehler is just like just leads those eras and like it, at least like bridges those eras is the word that I'm looking for, and does it in such a dominant fashion that if only she would come back more, I think we would all talk about it more. So Ian, any other thoughts on Amy Poehler?
I did want to just agree with both of you on that Meet Your Second Wife sketch. That is just brilliant. It is so funny. And I loved the Needlers. I love the dynamic between them. Loved Seth and Amy, really. Loved that segment on Weekend Update. And I think it's, I don't know if it's been said or if it's kind of obvious, but you almost look at her career at two different ways. Like she has two different careers on SNL, like being her sketch performer, like great. And then her whole like Weekend Update time, because it was just two different eras, like in her life too, as well as just in the show. And because it happened later on in her career, I feel like it does you kind of forget about all the great sketches that happened because there's so much Weekend Update with her as well. Like her old sketches, I mean, like when she was early on before she joined the show. So looking back, it was fun to be like, oh yeah, I forgot how great some of the older stuff with her was. Like the Caitlyn sketches with Horatio, like that one was just, her energy is unmatched. So, yeah, she's great. I'm just happy to see her here too, and happy to be able to talk about her.
And I love that word, energy. I mean, she's pure energy on the screen, and we just love getting to see that. And really, like post Will Ferrell leaving the show is looking for somebody to bring those energy moments to episodes, and she does that a lot. So I'm glad that she is here, up, firmly within that top 10. Rebecca, any final thoughts on Amy Poehler?
Just wanted to call out one comment I saw in the chat here from Ken. It's an example of how you don't need to have any remotely realistic impression to be funny. And I think that is so, so real with Amy, that like we're just laughing at her and she's just funny. And she's so smart that she's able to not have a strong impression, but yet we're still laughing. Not because it's chaotic, it's still tame and funny, but she just has her own narrative. I think that's what I've been trying to get at this whole time on any role she has, even if she's the person in the background sitting there in a class and is like the normal character, she has her own narrative and really encompasses the character. So not only like a sketch comic, but also like an actress. And we obviously go to see her after the show really dive into the acting of it all. But I think that's also why we do see her here.
Absolutely. Well, Rolling Stone on their list had Amy Poehler at 8. So very close to what we have her here. They mentioned Tina and Amy's update being very important legacy moments for the show. And I agree. Yeah, certainly important legacy wise, and so many great things to say about the amazing Amy Poehler. Okay. Well, those are our 3 that we are revealing tonight. We have one more segment to do on today's show, and then we're going to look forward to the top 6. So 3 more next week, 3 more for the final week as we get to the end of these rankings. So Rebecca, Ian, I'm going to bring up my rankings and where I place these 3 tonight. So I'll go through them, and you'll tell me if you think I place these 3 in the right spot on my list, or if maybe they should be higher or lower. So here we go. On the left side, I have the cast rankings as they stand right now. On the right side, I have my rankings. So from 44 all the way to 1, I have David Spade, Bowen Yang, Martin Short, Tracy Morgan, Ego Wodum, Chevy Chase, Sherry O'Terry, Mikey Day, Joe Piscopo, Tim Meadows, Adam Sandler, Jimmy Fallon, Seth Meyers, Taryn Killen, Norm MacDonald, Vanessa Bayer, Anna Gasteyer, Rachel Dratch, Chris Parnell, and Kevin Nealon. In my top 25, I have Bobby Moynihan, Beck Bennett, Adie Bryant, Molly Shannon, Tina Fey, Andy Samberg, Maya Rudolph, Fred Armisen, Will Forte, Jane Curtin. And then up inside the top 15, I got John Lovitz, Mike Myers, Daryl Hammond, Chris Farley, and I have Cecily Strong right now as number 10 on my list. I think this is the right spot for Cecily here for now. I think that maybe after she comes back and hosts a couple times, I could see her potentially moving up this list. They're just, there's no post SNL career to really talk about as far as, her coming back to the show and including that. I think her legacy is really, really strong, but I felt like she's probably more in that Sudeikis, Cecily, Chris Farley, Daryl Hammond area here. And then we start getting into that next year of really, really legends of the show. And that's when I get to Sudeikis at 9, Belushi at 8, Jan Hooks at 7, Bill Murray at 6, Gilda at 5. And my top 4 right now, I got Dan Aykroyd at 4. Keenan, we revealed last week, was my number 1, but has now been moved down to 3. I got Amy Poehler at number 2, and I got Dana Carvey at number 1 here so far on the list. So Amy, like I said, I give all the reasons why I think she's so important to the history of the show. She's firmly in my top 10, and I do have her slightly above Kenan Thompson just in terms of pure domination on the show for years. And then Dana Carvey, one of the most well-rounded cast members in SNL history. No way I couldn't consider him here for the number 1 ranking so far. So I got Dana Carvey at 1 on my list, Amy Poehler number 2, and Cecily Strong at number 10 revealed so far out of the 44. Rebecca, what do you think?
This is so much to take in. So while I mentally compartmentalize my thoughts, I just want to say your dedication to the Saturday Night Network is insane, listeners.
Thank you.
He puts on a show every day of the week, and then he made this John rankings list while simultaneously compiling everyone else's thoughts. But for you to come up here with John's rankings, you spent hours making sure this was right. There's no way you're just like, oh, this is my ranking. Like, you looked at this and you tortured yourself over this. You must have.
Well, I torture myself every single week because I'm like, because I have to, I slot them in as we go.
Okay.
Yeah, I really struggled. I really struggled with this exercise.
I'm glad that's actually a better way than I was thinking, because that would be a huge time slot. Anyway, and your hard work is really appreciated, but it's just like, I'm shook by your rankings here. Are you okay? Tina Fey's
Why, you disagree?
Tina Fey is 20 on your list. Anyway,
I mean, 20 is still really good.
You have Tina Fey as 20, which I completely disagree about. And you have Jason Sudeikis as 9, which is crazy to me. And John Lovitz as 14. And Maya Rudolph, Andy Samberg, and Tina Fey 18, 19, 20. Like, that is so wild to me. Like, that is crazy.
Well, we could debate that a little bit, but yeah, I think the Tina thing for sure. Like, again, Oli really appears on Weekend Update, comes back and hosts and is pretty dominant in sketches, but it's hard to put her over some of the people ahead of her who are all over the show, whereas Tina is really strictly on the Weekend Update desk. So that's something to consider here.
Okay, here's my food for thought. Then Tina is maybe just because I love her. I agree with your Dana Carvey. I agree with your Amy Poehler, and I'm really glad to see Kenan as 3. And I know we're gonna have 6 other people, and I hope he remains in that top 10, even with the other people here. And here's my food for thought. Here is Maya Rudolph at 18 is wild. It's wild to me, and Cecily being 10. So like, if your list is really following like your brain, that's not, the math isn't mathing to have then Maya 18. Like, you made your Tina point, while I can respectfully disagree. I don't get how you could have Cecily at 10 but Maya at 18. What's your thoughts there?
Well, the argument there is Cecily to me is like way more well-rounded than Maya Rudolph. Also appears like way more in the show than Maya Rudolph. I mean, Maya to me like pops up, does a few sketches, and has some like really good moments. And I love Maya Rudolph, by the way. Like, she was the first cast member for me during my live watch that like left the show while I was watching, and I was, like I said about Amy, like I was devastated when Maya Rudolph left the show. But I do think that Cecily Strong, in totality through 10.5 seasons of the show, I believe brings more to the show than Maya. So that's just my 2 cents about it. I mean, Maya does come back and host twice, plays Kamala once. Plays Kamala once since being elected. But again, like legacy wise, I do believe that like Maya Rudolph has a really strong one. Cecily is really tough to rank because we just saw her leave the show. But based on how everybody feels about Kate and Cecily and 80 and their domination as women on the show and how important it is for, you know, having eras that were dominated by women, sort of feel like I have to consider putting Cecily up as high as I did.
Okay, and then one last one, I'll leave you alone.
Sure,
I love Jason I love Jason Sudeikis, but number 9, do you just like really like him?
I think you're totally wrong about this one. I mean, yeah, I think you need to go back and brush up on your Jason Sudeikis because to me he is like all the greatest cast members in SNL history. I think he's like their baby. Like he's a derivative of, he has like qualities of all of them.
You have Jason Sudeikis above Chris Farley.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do, because I do think that Chris Farley has bigger moments than Jason Sudeikis in terms of the history of the show. But I think that Jason's overall contribution to the time of the show, like if you pull, like I said this on this episode, if you pull Jason Sudeikis out of SNL history, that era looks so different. Like he is the one who is really being the glue guy of those sketches, can play it straight, but then also can be extremely performative. Like I think he's just like, he is such an important cast member that you saw it when he came back to host, how incredibly strong he was. And I love Chris Farley. Again, we're picking like between 9 and 11 on my list, but like I have to go there.
You're listening. Yeah. We have to get to the nooks and crannies here. I mean, I don't know. I think, I mean, you have now, I don't know how many more times you could say, at least in this even episode, your qualifications for people. So I probably just have to listen closer to those. Cause like the statistics is 1/3 of it. And like, that is 30% of the reason I think you would have him or like these people on the list that high up because of like their actual screen time and that. But I don't know.
Look, again,
I don't know.
Everybody has their own criteria. That's why we have the cast rankings next to John rankings, because
I could sit and make my own list if I want, but
you should. That's the exercise we're doing here. No, that's the exercise we're doing here, and that's the fun of it. But I want to get Ian's thoughts in here. I'll just say that again, for me, if we're talking about the best SNL cast member of all time, like the one that I described with Dana Carvey, which is like build in a lab your perfect SNL cast member, you are likely to have Chris Farley, perhaps higher than Jason Sudeikis on the list, just because Chris Farley is just such a force. But that's not the only consideration here. There's also, you know, like overall contributions, analytics, legacy, like all this stuff that you have to put into consideration. And I'm trying to be as objective as possible because I do love a lot of the, like, you know, Will Forte, putting him at 16 is tough for me because he's my favorite cast member of all time. Anyways, Ian, I want to like get your thoughts in here. So what do you think? Dana, Amy, Cecily, 1, 2, and 10 on my list.
Well, if you're going off of what you said, like it is hard to separate your own personal like bias and opinions when doing something based on like just an analytic standpoint. But I'm still happy to see that Cecily made the top 10, and I think it's very fair to have Amy and Dana in your 1 and 2. Because they're just, I mean, they are built. They might have been built in the lab. Who knows? I mean, they weren't made. They weren't like original cast members. So the show was established long enough to where you could just be like, pop some great sketch performers out. But I guess if that were the case, we'd probably see Amy more. But
yeah, I thought I was going to have to argue about Amy Poehler tonight, and I'm so relieved that I don't, because I'm glad. Like the chat has really impressed me tonight. Like you guys really impressed me. Like I thought I was going to have to argue that Amy Poehler to me is like is definitely a top 10 cast member, and I'm glad that I don't.
We've ever talked about my love for Amy Poehler before. I don't know.
Well, I'm happy to have you on today.
Dove deep into it. Yeah,
it's great. Okay, well though that is where my list is right now. As I've been saying every week, the list is fluid. So I respect the arguments from Rebecca, from Ian, from the chat. I will consider moving people up and down the list. We got 2 more weeks to finalize and lock that list in. And we have 6 more cast members to reveal and talk about. I'm sure if you love SNL, you probably know who those 6 are, but do you know what order they came in? It's going to be interesting to talk about this, and we're going to continue this next Thursday night, where we will be back for the next 2 Thursdays to wrap up this list and head towards the holidays. This has been such a fun countdown series. I'm so glad we got to do it. We're definitely going to do more things like this in the future, and I'm so glad that the 2 of you were able to join me tonight. So looking forward to having you both on soon. Rebecca, please tell the listeners if they can check you out anywhere.
Yeah, check me out on social media at Rebarbecue. I mean, RuPaul's Drag Race just announced their cast today, so if you follow me on Twitter, I'm going to get annoying. But I'm on Saturday Night Network. I was on the an episode a few weeks ago, and I pop up here and there. So tune in when you see my name come up on the episodes. And thanks for having me, John. This is so fun. The countdown. I can only assume that if we're in the top 10 of the list, we're top 10 podcasters. Perhaps.
We have not done the podcaster rankings list yet, but
that's fun.
Yeah,
that's so fun.
Let's see how many ideas we get through over the next few years, and then maybe we can do something like that.
I'm unprompting people to criticize me now in the chat. So
yes, let us know where you have Rebecca on your SNN podcast rankings. That would be great. Speaking of somebody who loves the SNN, that's Ian, who is such a great supporter of our show and one of our amazing patrons. Ian, I gotta ask, do you have the power rankings and Mike's show behind you? Is that what that is?
Yeah, I was behind in watching it, and then I'm like, let me pause this. I'll get back to it after the other one.
That's
so I just left it on. I thought about turning the TV off so it wasn't a distraction, but I don't want to lose my spot.
No, that's great promo. I love it. Thank you for promoting By the Numbers, which aired earlier tonight. So you can go and check out that show if you want to see the screen time from this past week. We also got our Hot Take show coming up, Roundtable, another By the Numbers, and of course the show next week. So a full slate of shows for you to cover Adam Driver and Olivia Rodrigo. Ian, anything you wanted to plug?
I have nothing to plug.
Okay, no problem. Well, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it.
Yeah, just this episode that I'm watching here. Go watch that, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, very excited for everything we have here. I'm really excited for Adam Driver, trying to keep the expectations low as we should, but he's a great host. So it should be a lot of fun this weekend. Can't wait to talk about it with you all. Thanks for joining us on this late Wednesday evening. I know we had to move the time slot a little bit, but I appreciate everybody joining us in the live chat. So much fun. You can follow us at the SNL Network to see everything we got going on. We're going to have a bunch of Adam Driver content coming over the next few days. You can also subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify to never miss a show that we have here on the SNN. On behalf of Rebecca and Ian, my name is John from the Saturday Night Network. We will see you next time, everybody.